Hey there! Welcome to IDP Plus Player Props Pod, where if you're looking for some defensive props to place for Week 14 of the NFL season, you've come to the right place. Stick around, and Johnny and I will get into some of our favorite tackle props for Week 14 of the NFL season. Welcome back to another week of the IDP Plus Player Props Pod, where Johnny and I have been giving you guys a list of about 8 players who have tackle lines on DraftKings that we are particularly interested in. We make a case for each one of these guys, and we've just kind of been laying out the research we've been doing for bets of our own. So these aren't even really suggestions to you. It's just we've done research ourselves. We're laying it out there for you on menu style. So if we convince you on any one of these or more, great. Hopefully it works out for you guys. We've kind of been on a little bit of a heater the last couple of weeks. I kind of fell off last week, but Johnny was 4 for 4 in his picks, where I was 4 for 4 the week prior. So we're hoping that we can carry some of this momentum into a third week here and keep this train rolling. So let's see if we can make some more gravy after our Thanksgiving, uh, good Thanksgiving weekend here. So I'm actually going to kick it off to Johnny to start us off. I will just remind everybody to bet responsibly. Stay within your means, and if you feel as if you need help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, with that being said, kick us off here, Johnny. Who do you got for us for our first play of the week?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got some good picks here as far as odds. Some high odds here. I'm sorry, some low odds. So usually I come out with some one minus 160s, minus 140s. This first one, I'm gonna start you out with minus 130. And after looking at what DraftKings has out this week, one of the ones I really like here, they don't really have much on solos and assists yet, but just combined tackles. Zack Baun over 7.5 combined tackles this week. Um, it's going to be a tough matchup versus Carolina, week 14. Week 13, if we're looking at recent sample size, last week versus Baltimore was a better matchup. In that game, he had 13 tackles. This is what we have, been accustomed to with Zack Baun this year is just double-digit tackle games. Specifically looking at over 7.5, how many times has he done that? The hit marker is very good. It's 3/4 of the games, total games played. At 9 out of 12 games played, has he gotten 8 or more tackles? So once again, looking at last week, he was able to get 13 versus Baltimore. I get it. It's a better matchup. But at the same time, Carolina, we've talked about them before on the show, and we've all seen, if you're watching Red Zone or you're looking at Sunday highlights, Carolina has actually been a better team, been able to sustain drives. So for me, this isn't such a horrible on paper matchup as it appears to be. And as a matter of fact, in bad matchups, what we call bad matchups, when opposing defenses are giving, probably the bottom third, we'll say, is a bad matchup, as far as tackles, opposing tackles allowed. 2 out of 3 bad matchups, Zack Baun has actually hit this marker. Earlier in the season versus Atlanta, a bad matchup to opposing linebackers. He had 9 tackles against Jacksonville, very bad against, trying to get tackles against linebackers. He was able to get 10. And then the horrible matchup we've come to find out, the Rams. He fizzled in that one, only had 3. So 2 for 3 in bad matchups and 9 of 12 overall, getting 8 or more tackles. So pretty confident in this one for minus 130. Zack Baun over 7.5 combined. Axton, over to you.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Carolina's been able to sustain a lot more drives lately, and it just kind of you got to figure that they're going to be on the field a shit ton, because I imagine that Philadelphia is going to have some quick scores early on, and then they're just going to pass it back over to Carolina to probably get another long 7 or 8 play drive before they either finally convert or give it up. So Zach Bond being a over producer just in general, I'm not really too worried about a matchup when you see the books. Well, I think we've said this before. When you see the books put a pure tackler's line at 7.5, it almost really doesn't matter. You're going to kind of find that here with a couple of other plays that we have for this week as well, because they've just, again, the books have been putting, which last week I kind of got caught on a couple of lines for some pure tacklers where maybe I hit the wrong line on that guy. But I mean, 9 times out of 10, that's not going to happen when you have a pure tackler at 7.5. More often than not, they're going to be able to squeeze that out. I feel like so. I like Zack Baun at 7.5 for -130 there. My first play this week is going to be for Jamien Sherwood of the New York Jets to get over 7.5 combined tackles. This comes in at -145 this week. And let's see here. Sherwood plays Miami. This is a top 10 matchup for linebacker production, especially with Tua at quarterback. Three of the last four opposing linebackers have hit this playing Miami. So at least one linebacker in general has hit it in the last four games against Miami as well. So it's just bodes well. And whenever again you get a guy that's just proven himself throughout this year. I mean, the last couple of games, I know Jamie Sherwood's kind of had a couple of off matchups, and he's not really overproduced like we'd like to see in a pure tackler. But for the rest of the year, he's comfortably hit this in 50% of his games this year, and he's not really even had the role for the entire year. So the fact that he's hit it and he's not really even been a full time player all year, and he's hit this in 50% of their games, it just bodes well. So especially when you've got a plus matchup against the Miami Dolphins, he's in a contract year, looking to get a payday. I think that's all just kind of piles on for Jamie Sherwood to kind of continue the season that we've seen from him and continue to be that linebacker darling that we've all come to know so far this year. So I'm banking on him getting over 7.5 this week. So thoughts on that, Johnny, and then we'll roll into your next play here.
Yeah, man, I love it, and I love the facts that you dropped. I think you said 3 out of 4 of the last teams they played. At least one of those linebackers hit it. I like your pick so much, Axton, that I'm gonna go back in the well and say that both of these linebackers hit it this week. So my next pick is Quincy Williams as well, also over that 7.5 combined tackle mark for -120. Yeah, I mean, I think. A big factor in this week. You got two big factors. Number one, you'd mentioned the top 10 matchup in Miami, allowing 17.8 tackles to opposing linebackers per game. So there's room. All they need is 16. They're allowing almost 18. So there's room. This is within that margin. And the second big factor, I think, is the elephant in the room for that New York team, that New York defense is this week we finally got wind that C.J. Mosley is on IR, is not going to come back this week or this year, even at that token. So to me, like Quincy Williams this season, maybe it was because it was a different pairing. I'm not sure, what version we saw this year. It wasn't the same version as last year, but I think just knowing that it's going to be him, it's going to be Sherwood. They don't have to look behind them. Have eyes in the back of their heads. And in this great matchup, Axon, I think they're going to go out there and bang. And I could see in Miami being up up in this game. So I'm not worried about a game flow factor here. I think if anything, game flow is going to go in their way. So here's to looking for both of those linebackers from New York to get that 8 or more tackles this week. Axton, back to you.
Yeah, I agree. And just sitting here thinking about the game Miami versus New York, this feels like a game where Miami might get up early and just continue and just lean on the run game. They really love the run game. They operate best through Devon Achan and right now Jonnu Smith. So those are the two most reliable pieces of this offense. And you got to figure that if they go up early, they're just going to lean on the rushing game and just grind it out and try to just eat clock. So the Jets have been kind of up and down, but they really haven't produced much in the way of wins or just being able to compete on a regular basis. They've been pretty up and down so far this year. So Miami has been pretty consistent with Tua under the helm, especially now they've pretty well got a good groove going. So I like for both of these guys to hit over 7.5. Again, a couple of guys that have been able to do it time and time again in a good matchup. We'll take that 7.5 line every day.
And let me say one more thing here, Axton, too. If you look at the numbers, Quincy Williams, on the surface, you tell me it's a bad bet. He's only hit this marker 4 out of 12 times, 1/3. But when you look at last week versus Seattle, Quincy Williams had 7 tackles, one shy of what we need. Seattle's ranked dead last in giving up tackles to linebackers with 12 a game only. So this week you get a great matchup in Miami, allowing 17.8, almost 6 more tackles per game. Bodes well for both these guys. So back to you, Ash.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good get right game for both these guys to finally get back over that eight tackle mark and maybe even flirt with some double digits here because with like say as of late these two really haven't hit their ceilings in recent weeks, so maybe they can do that for us this week. My next play here, I've got a high watermark that we're trying to hit here, but nonetheless, I'm going with Daiyan Henley to hit this 9.5 tackle or uh, over 9.5 combined tackle mark. This comes in at -130. The books are pretty confident even that Daiyan Henley is going to get this. It's not a great matchup. If you go look at the last few weeks, Kansas City has not given up a ton of protection to opposing linebackers. But that being said, we've got a pure tackler here. We've got a guy who just really has a nose for the football with the kind of stats that he's been putting up. It's been very Alex Singleton esque. Guy, it's 10 is his floor. It seems like ever since he got named the full time linebacker, the lead linebacker in L.A. I think it was 6 weeks ago. He's crushed this. I mean, he's had no less than 10 tackles in a game, and you can't tell me he's played all 6 of the top, uh, most favorable matchups for linebacker production. And I think Kansas City, something's got to give here where uh, yeah, there's many facets to that, I guess, when you're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. Me being a fan, I'm talking about the offense's kind of inconsistencies. They've been able to run the best. They work the best through the run, and now they have two great running backs. I think if they can get them both going this week, which could be tough because yeah, the Chargers do have a pretty hefty run defense. But I imagine that Kansas City is still going to try to do what they can and see how successful the ground game is, and maybe it works for them and they just opt to keep running right into Daiyan Henley's lap. But at the same time, I think Henley's one of these guys that's going to go out and get his 10 tackles a game, regardless of what the game script says. And he's proved that the last 6 weeks. So I'm more or less riding the gravy train and just hoping, and not hoping. This has been hit 100% since he's taken that full time linebacker role. So yeah, we're just more riding the guy rather than the matchup in this one. So it might be a little hefty, a little tall task to ask of Daiyan Henley, but what do you think about that one for this week? And then we'll get into your next one.
I mean, last week versus Atlanta, bottom 5 matchup. If he can do it against Atlanta, I think he can do it against Kansas City here. And 6 for 6 in the last 6. So knock on wood, but I'm with you, Axon. I like it. And also roster him a couple fantasy leagues, so I'm definitely rooting for it a couple different ways there. So like the pick. For my next one, I'm going to go with Harrison Smith over 5.5 combined tackles for -120. Usually don't talk about defensive backs too often. Might throw some Damar Hamlin, but it's not the week for him with a bad matchup versus the Rams. But here comes Harrison Smith with a great matchup versus Atlanta. Actually, as a matter of fact, top 5 in tackles allowed to safeties, as a matter of fact. So it's a great matchup. I mean, we've seen Derwin James last week, Tony Jefferson. They played the Chargers played Atlanta. They ended up with those pairings ended up with 19 combined tackles. Derwin had 10, Jefferson had 9. So pretty good looking back in the rear view the last week. Pretty good perspective status here for Harrison Smith. I like all 3 of these guys in the backfield for Minnesota this week, but Harrison Smith, 18 tackles over the last 2 games. He's hit this in 7 out of 12 games. When you look at Harrison Smith as a whole, you kind of don't really put him in the forefront. He's kind of an older player now. He's on the back burner of his career, but at the same time, he's hit this in 7 out of 12 games, which kind of surprised me. I didn't think the numbers were going to be that strong, but it is a low marker at 5.5. So take advantage of it. Not plus odds by any means, but minus 120. I think it's a solid bet here. Last two games, like I said, 9 tackles, averaging 9 tackles coming into this game, and those weren't great matchups like this one is. So Harrison Smith minus 120, combine and parlay it with something else, and I think that's a pretty safe bet here, Axe.
Yeah, you're right. Harrison Smith is just historically year over year, he's averaged right around this 5 to 6 tackle mark. It seems like, and especially when you get a positive game script, a top five matchup for safety for a guy who will outproduce, overproduce, not overproduce. How do I want to say he will over? Yeah, maybe
Achieve.
that's right. Overachieve. Correct. Good call. I appreciate that. Yes, he will overachieve in a plus matchup, or even an average matchup. So I like that Harrison Smith pick, especially at 5.5. If it were 6.5, that might be a little high for me, but 5.5 seems pretty good for Harrison
And
Smith. I
by the
like
way,
that.
Ronald Darby is out, has been ruled out, one of their better corners. So I'm interested to see. Maybe Metellus kicks out, plays more outside, and there's even more opportunity for Harrison Smith in that free safety position.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? Anything's possible. You know he's going to be on the field for every snap. That's a fact. So this ought to be a good matchup where Atlanta can sustain drives. They haven't really been putting points up on the board, but they're still able to sustain drives. You're still seeing Kirk Cousins throw for 250 plus 200, 250 plus. So there should still be plenty of production for him to eat up back there. So. Before we get into an ad read here, I've got my third play. Got Caden Elliss to get over 8.5 combined tackles. This actually came in at plus money. I love this because Caden Elliss has just been a monster this year. He plays Minnesota. It's the opposite side of Johnny's Harrison Smith play here, but Minnesota is a top five matchup for linebacker production so far this year, and 5 of the last 8 linebackers to play Minnesota have achieved this mark. So Elliss has hit this in 5 straight weeks before they went into the bye, and he didn't quite get it last week. He was rushing the passer a little bit more. Didn't quite get that mark. He had 5 tackles, but and like I say, before going into the bye, he'd hit this in 5 straight. I like Caden Elliss so far this year. He's really averaging kind of between, I would say, 7 to 9 tackles. And you give me a top five matchup on a guy that can overachieve in an average matchup. I like this for Caden Elliss this year, and I think if anything, Minnesota could go up early and just run the shit out of the ball the rest of the game and eat clock. So I think this is going to play into Ellis's favor. I should see plenty of long drives for him to rack up plenty of tackles. So I like this 8.5 line for Caden Elliss at plus 100. So like I say, that's going to be my third play here, and I'm going to kick it over to Johnny to tell you a little bit about a sponsor of ours.
Yeah, I like it, man. Caden Elliss, 8.5 is achievable. Kind of scares me with Landman and Anderson back. His production maybe have taken a hit with those two guys back, but great matchup. We've seen against Minnesota teams, opposing linebackers eat up. So
Yep.
respected acts.
Yeah, I see that as I think Landman and
Anderson.
Anderson are going to be fine. I think they eat into each other. It seems like to me. It seems like Elliss has kind of been entrenched all year, but you're right in terms of production. It could be a little bit of a toss up and a little bit dependent on who he plays with, but he's been pretty consistent so far this year. So I felt pretty good about eight and a
Right,
half for him.
right. And plus, Cousins been looking scary. They've been looking scary on offense. And
Mm.
anyhow, all right. So yeah, get into the ad read. So hey, all those people, viewers and listeners who continue to support us and view our channel, we appreciate you. If you are not subscribed already, head over to idpplus.com, our company website. And if you want to do one better and become a subscriber right now, just go to idpplus.com/membership, hit enter, and then when you get to the subscription page, when you become a subscriber at the checkout page, use the promo code PROPS to get 20% off your subscription. Once again, idpplus.com/membership, promo code PROPS to get your 20% off. Axton, me or you, who's up?
It'll be you, you're up, brother.
I'm up. I'm up. All right, for my last one, plus odds. I'm gonna give you a plus bet on this one. This is my boy since he took over. Really liked him coming out of college. I think it was undrafted. Nah, it might have been late round rookie, but anyhow, Tyrice Knight. I like him over 7.5 combined tackles. Um, he's hit this 2 out of 3 games. He's become a starter since Tyrell Dodson was cut 3 games ago. He's hit this in 2 out of 3. Last week was the one he did not hit this in a bottom 5 matchup, however, versus the Jets. He ended with 4 tackles. I'm kind of willing to throw this one out the window and look at the first 2 where he did hit on this marker. 23 combined tackles in the last 3 games, still with 4 last week. So, when we look at those 3 weeks collectively, that's an average of 7 2/3, 7.67. And then when you put the icing on the cake this week, he's not playing the Jets. He's playing Arizona this time. Arizona gives up the second most tackles per game to linebackers with 19.3. I could see this kind of week being a week where Ernest Jones gets, by the way, his line's at 9.5. I like it too, where he gets 10 or 11 tackles. I could see Ernest Jones getting 11 tackles and Tyrice Knight getting 8, and there's a 19 right there. So to me, it's a great matchup. Last week, I forget who Arizona play. Oh, Minnesota. Blake Cashman went out and had 11 tackles. So to me, Tyrice Knight is a great play this week. I believe they played each other 2 weeks ago, right? Yeah, he played Arizona. Tyrice Knight played Arizona 2 weeks ago in Week 12, ended with 9 tackles and a sack. So there's some good track record for you. He's only started 3 games. 2 of them, well, he's going to be playing fourth. He's starting his 4th game. 2 of them will be against the Arizona Cardinals. And one of those games, 9 tackles already. So Tyrice Knight, I think him and both him and Ernest Jones in a smash spot this week. I also do IDP plus rankings. I have Ernest Jones as my number 1 linebacker this week. So I really like both of these guys, both these pairings. Tyrice Knight over 7.5 combined tackles plus 100. Axton, over to you.
Yeah, that's another sneaky little play. I think that's another game where you could almost bet both these linebackers get it just due to game script. And and Seattle linebackers have just historically, that's just always been a great position ever since the Bobby Wagner, Jordan Brooks days. Now we're kind of seeing that even carry over into this carousel of linebackers that we've kind of seen in Seattle so far this year. But Tyrice Knight was kind of he was a highly touted rookie linebacker coming into this season. I know a lot of people were pretty high on him, so it's nice to see him get some run and really produce with it. So I think just like you, this is a good game for him to kind of get back on track to kind of where he started out when he got that full-time linebacker role. So top 5 matchup and some plus money at 7.5. That line that we like to see for guys that have a nose for the football. So good play there. And I totally forgot your banner, so sorry I dropped the ball on that one, Johnny. Won't forget mine though. Now that we talk about it. But I've got Tremaine Edmunds to wrap us up here. I've got Tremaine Edmunds under 7.5 combined tackles. This comes in at plus 110 this week. And he plays the San Francisco 49ers, which so far this year it's generally been a pretty good matchup, but Tremaine Edmunds is one of those guys that underproduces in your average matchups and does not overachieve in plus matchups. So he's only one of the last 4 linebackers. One linebacker in the last 2 weeks have hit this against San Francisco. They're kind of in shambles right now. This offense really can't get anything going. They've got injuries everywhere. They're guys that are the only consistent player on this offense is George Kittle. And then you've even seen Brock Purdy hampered by injuries, and he's got things bothering him. And now they've got a rookie running back coming in and going to take all the snaps. So it just doesn't seem like a positive game script for a guy who tends to underachieve. And Tremaine matter of fact, Tremaine has only hit this in 3 games so far this year. Mind you, he's played 12. So the under is actually hit on the line at 7.5 for Tremaine Edmunds 75% of the time this year. So, and honestly, I like to say, as of late, San Francisco just hasn't given up much production to opposing linebackers. I expect that to continue again this week. I think maybe they look a little bit better and more successful, but even still, those tackles to me are going to go to TJ Edwards, and Tremaine Edmunds will yet again underachieve. So give me that plus money, plus 110 for Tremaine Edmunds to hit under his 7.5 combined tackle line. That's going to wrap us up for week 14. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. For those of you that your first time, if you're a return viewer, thank you to everybody. Hopefully we've convinced you on a line or two, and maybe we can help you put some extra cash in your pocket this week. So good luck to everybody. Again, reminder to stay, bet within your means, do not overdo things, and let's just be responsible here. Call it 1-800-GAMBLER if you have a problem, but otherwise let's have some fun with this and see if we can bring home some extra cheddar this week. So again, thanks everyone. Go check out the website, throw some subscription, like, comment, subscribe, follow Johnny on Twitter at JohnnyFreakinF1 and myself at AxemanIDP. That's going to do it for this week, everybody. So we'll see you back here next week for week 15. Good luck out there.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.